Hello, everybody. Welcome to the DPMR webinar series, our take on educational and inspirational running-centric discussions in a time where this format's our best tool for hosting impactful community events. My name is Chris Cloyd. I'm a DPMR member. We're here to talk with Jeff Rauenhorst. And if I butchered your name, I just realized I've never pronounced that out loud, Jeff.
It was perfect.
Yes. Perfect. All right. We can shut it down. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk with you, Jeff. This is a really fun event that we've been putting on. This is our fourth or fifth, I suppose. Those of you listening, our membership supports these events, and so much other quality programming. If you're not a member yet or would like to consider gifting a membership for the holidays, please toggle over to DonnerPartyMountainRunners.com after this conversation to learn more. Jeff, how are you today?
Doing great. Got a good run on Clear Creek today, so down near Carson City.
Yeah, so, yeah. The eastern slope this is one of my favorite times of year because you can go skiing on the western slope and running and biking on the eastern slope.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's good to live up here.
Yep. Speaking of being spoiled, Jeff, I've been pretty spoiled to host most of these conversations with friends. I'm proud to call you a fellow mountain runner up here in North Lake Tahoe, but we don't have that friendship, and I don't know how much of our membership is familiar with you yet. Could you give me like an elevator speech about you?
Sure. So I moved up to the Tahoe Basin about 5 years ago. I, like many of us, I escaped the Bay Area, and so I've been living here. So I grew up in Minnesota, which will be relevant to our conversation. Grew up in the Twin Cities. Chemical engineer by training. I've done everything from pharmaceutical manufacturing to artificial intelligence, control software for energy efficiency, doing solar installations on Catholic facilities right now. So, been doing a little bit of everything. I have a family, 2 kids. I have a 13-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son that we all love living up here. Maybe that's a quick little summary.
That's it's really useful for me. I'm married to a master's degree toting engineer, so I'm used to this like overwhelming feeling of talking to brilliant engineers. This is great for me.
Yep.
You mentioned you moved here 5 years ago. When did you come to running? Was this before or after that?
Yeah, so I've been kind of running all my life. I think what happened is in 2008, I joined a startup in the Bay Area, and I did the whole startup thing and had 2 kids and got totally out of shape. So I was living in Berkeley at the time and started running just a little bit. And then, my circle kept expanding. I realized I could get up into Tilden Park, kind of the hills up above Berkeley. And then I just wanted to keep going. And so I kept running and running. And, so I was running some more and signed up for a trail marathon, the Summit to the Sea, down south of the Bay. And then, I was at a birthday lunch with some friends, and Ethan and Emma Veneklausen were there. So they're both ultra runners.
And great people. Shout out Ethan.
Yeah, they're awesome. And I remember Emma, in her sweet voice was like, Jeff, you could run an ultra. And sure enough, like 6 months later, I ran my first 50K.
I'm not fortunate enough to spend much time with Emma. I look forward to making her acquaintance when we can all do that. But Ethan is responsible for many, many, many people deciding to sign up for that ultra.
Yep. And then, so that was about 6 years ago. Yeah, so it was the year before I moved. And then I ran the North Face 50 miler, just weeks before we moved up here. And then kind of I've been hooked. And then up here, I mean, how can you not want to spend more time on the trails?
Totally. I don't want to shift the story to my story by any means, but I came to running very late. I probably have maybe 7 years of mountain running in me now, but I am a recovering road bike racer turned triathlete. Then I just started running in the hills to train for it and just cut all that stuff out and did it. So it's nice to talk with somebody who I would humbly offer, we both came to it pretty late,
Yeah.
But that's awesome. And I hope everybody listening, like, if us two can do it, you can do it.
Exactly.
That's really cool, man. Those are some great events to get started. I'm proud of my running career, but I also have not taken it as far. I mean, you've now run a couple of huge events. You've set an FKT on a very popular trail? I mean, that's a pretty stratospheric rise, if you ask me.
Well, I think it's just an excuse to spend more time in the mountains.
Totally.
So,
I can't believe there.
yeah, and the funny little thing here is, so I have a great wife and she's incredibly supportive. But when I started to get into this, she told me I could never run a 100-miler. So up until this point, I haven't run a 100-miler.
Just skip.
Yeah, I've done, a bunch of 50Ks, a bunch of 50-milers. But yeah, just it was 2 years ago, I turned 40 actually 2 years ago. And my wife kind of gave me carte blanche to do whatever I wanted. So so I decided to do the Camino to Santiago in Spain.
Oh.
So the pilgrimage route, and I did the one most Americans know about that starts in France, basically on the Pyrenees, on the border of Spain and France, at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. Travels about 500 miles to Camino to Santiago de Compostela through northern Spain. And of course, right, it's like, I could hike it, but why not run it? So I just set out the goal of doing about 50K a day. And so it took me 18 days to do it. So I took one rest day during it. But that was a spectacular experience. And since we have a lot of runners here, the best way I could describe it is the best race for aid stations that you could ever imagine. Because about every 3 to 5 miles, there's a town that you go through, and they have a hotel, they have running water, they have a bar, they have a place to get food and grocery store, and so it was great. Oh, and it's incredibly well signposted. They have these yellow arrows everywhere, so it's very hard to get lost on it.
Yeah, that's a tremendous. I mean, that's just awesome to hear about. I know selfishly, my wife and I have talked about doing that. She's a mountain biker. And my understanding is that you can bike it in, hike it, walk it, run it, whatever. And we could do it together. And just, if she gets tired, she stops at the bar or the whatever, and we just kind of figure it out together. And so thanks for the inspiration, Jeff.
Yeah. Hey, I'd recommend it to anybody. Of course, after all this COVID stuff passes, it's a tremendous experience. And I did it as a pilgrimage, so there's a religious aspect to it for me. But there are lots of people, graduating college, career transitions, just out having some fun for the summer.
It'll be really interesting to see, as you alluded to, whatever the next chapter post-COVID looks like. I think a lot of people are going to do a lot of things with new motivation and renewed enthusiasm.
I think so. Yeah. And of course, so we've done the Camino, and I kind of threw it in with my wife. I'm like, well, I'm doing the Camino. It's like great training. Like, there's this Tahoe 200 thing, because we could see the lake from, where we are, and just the aesthetics of being able to, in one push, go all around Lake Tahoe, which I call my backyard. Yeah. She's like, oh, okay. So I signed up and then ran the Tahoe 200 2 years ago as well.
That's awesome. If those of you listening need any more evidence that our wives are brilliant and us boys are stupid, it's that your wife said, don't run 100, and you somehow decided to run a 200. That's all we need. We can print the books now.
Yep. Yeah. It just, that went really well. So Adam Kimball, who I think most of you know, helped coach me. And so I ended up, I think at mile 30 or 40, I met Kelly Barber for the first time. And he and I ran together for about 60 miles of it. And had a great time, and ended up, it was surreal. It was the most present I've ever been. It just all flowed really well, and I kind of blew away my crew by just hitting milestones way faster than I expected. And what I did, the one thing, 200s, everybody's trying to figure out how to do them. So I did the opposite of everybody else. I slept 3 to 5 hours a night, and then I always felt great. Woke up and went, and ended up in 15th place, which was crazy. I think actually my wife cried at the end, not because I finished, because she's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, that's a story common told. I,
Yep.
it's cool that you mentioned you sleep. So I've had the privilege of hosting a few of these conversations, and one of them was
Mhm.
with Adam Kimball, who
Mhm.
I'm proud to call a friend, and his lap was the antithesis of that. I'm gonna pin it and just
Yeah.
hold on for dear life. And one of my friends, Gretchen Brugman, did it many years ago in 4 days, and each night they like stopped at a hotel, hot tubs, restaurant, whatever.
Yep.
And obviously the 200 is something different entirely, but it's just cool and inspiring to me to see so many different ways to engage with it. I
Mhm.
know Adam's wife Karen is actually doing it just piecemeal, which is a
Mhm.
very different experience. But I
Yep.
hope that I know I'm inspired by talking with all you guys and getting different lenses on what can happen out there. And I hope everybody listening is like, you can do the lake lap. You go do it. Just whatever appeals to you.
Yep.
Sleep like Jeff. Don't sleep like Adam. Stay in hotels. Whatever.
Yeah, just sleep on the trail like some people do. I paced a guy for 40 miles last year, and yeah, he barely slept. And he slept in about 10-minute increments on the trail, and it worked for him, and he did really well.
Yeah, and I think I'm excited. Ultra running in general is pretty new, but like the 100+ mile races that you're alluding to are very new, and it's kind of intoxicating. And I'm not, if my wife's listening, I'm not running a 200 anytime soon. But it's cool it's very uncharted, and you get to kind of explore the cutting edge of the sport, which is very unique for anybody.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And, sleep is a big thing that I don't think people have figured out yet. Uh, I mean, I did it pretty well. Of course, Adam always teases me because he's like, Jeff, if you just didn't sleep, you could have probably did about 6 hours better. So,
Good to know, Adam. Thanks, buddy.
yep.
If you didn't bring food, you'd be lighter, Jeff.
Uh, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how we're gonna do it. Well, we're here to celebrate your Superior Hiking Trail FKT.
Mhm.
Did I get that right? Superior Hiking Trail?
That's it. Yep.
Can you tell me more about that route as somebody that's not familiar at all?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, I grew up in Minnesota and spent a lot of time up in northern Minnesota, and so that's one of the reasons why this route attracted me. So it starts in northern Minnesota. You can actually you start, you can see the Canadian border, and you see the river that's actually the border between the U.S. and Canada. And I started from the north and went south, and it basically follows the Lake Superior and goes all the way through Duluth, and then takes a little bit of a easterly turn and it ends at the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin. So it's 310 miles. I think it's about 46,000 feet of climbing.
Wait.
Uh,
Wait. Hold on. And this is ignorance. I'm cutting you off out of ignorance. Isn't Minnesota flat?
it's completely flat,
Just
except
one
where this
trail
trail
is
is.
okay. So
Well, yeah. So I mean, I grew up in the Twin Cities. It's completely flat, and where most people have visited. But along Lake Superior, there's a series of bluffs. And what's interesting is the lake level is about 600 feet, and the highest point of the trail is about 1,800 feet. So it's only so. But the thing is, this trail is a little sadistic because basically any hill or bluff it sees, it just goes straight up. And so you're just constantly going up, down, up, down, up, down. It's not like the big climbs that you can get out here or, in other big mountain ranges, but you're always going up and down. So they believe if there's a hill, they go up it. They don't believe in switchbacks. And then the trail is really rocky and ruddy. Lots of kind of almost scrambling up rocks. It's northern Minnesota, so there are trees everywhere, and these tree root systems become these spider webs that you have to work through, and it just makes things like the Tahoe Rim Trail, look like the 8-lane highway that you can just cruise on. It's a totally different trail than you see out here.
that's remarkable, and I appreciate you sharing that, because again, out of ignorance, I would not have assumed that, but that's pretty cool to hear about. It's nice it kind of highlights at least my own lack of awareness, and we should all take bigger swings to learn more about exotic places.
Yeah, it is a little off the beaten track. There is the Superior 100, it's a 100-mile race that is it's 80-90% on the Superior Hiking Trail.
Do you know offhand what the and that's wild. Do you know offhand, as I'm thinking about it, what the 200 was in vertical?
40,000 feet.
So you ran more vertical on the Superior Hiking Trail.
Yep, but about 100 miles longer too. So,
well, who's counting? I just think that's cool for all of our members as a Truckee Tahoe based membership. I think a lot of DPMR members can wrap their head around this is more vert than the Tahoe 200 course.
Yep.
How did you mentioned that you did the 200, which I would assume is great training. How did you target training for such a different type of course?
Yeah, well, the beauty is where we live in the mountains, you can get all the vertical you want here. I can go out my backyard and be up to Rifle Peak in about 2,500 feet of vertical. So, a lot of training around here, but I was planning on doing an unsupported TRT for training, but COVID threw a loop in everything for us. So we ended up, the family, we took our travel trailer and just drove out to Minnesota for a month where my family is. I still have a lot of family there. So we just, quarantine in northern Minnesota on a lake. And so, we spent 4th of July there, complete with, a parade of boats around the lake, as you do in northern Minnesota. So I decided to go, you might as well do training specific to what you're trying to attempt. So I went on the Superior Hiking Trail. And, it's funny because I came from here, I'd done Tahoe 200, I averaged it's like 64, 65 miles a day. Like, okay, carried a pack and stuff, but like 300 miles, I naively was like, I'll feel good the first day. I'll do 60 miles the first day. And then, I'll do 50 miles for 5 days. And, that seemed okay. And, it's 310 miles, 310 miles and you get through it. So after the 4th of July, my dad and wife dropped me off. And so I spent 4 days on the trail training and did a short, 25-mile day to start. And then I was like, okay, this is the time to do some 50s. And I got killed. The trail, it was so hard. You couldn't really get a good pace. And then the biggest thing is I was trying to do this unsupported. So I think my pack was about 19, 20 pounds when I started. And it's amazing how hard it is to move efficiently with a 20-pound pack on, especially when you're used to, running with a light, some snacks and some water. And let's see, it rained for 2.5 days. I got trench foot, tons of blisters. And of course, northern Minnesota in July is not an ideal place to be running. It was hot. It was, in the upper 80s. It was about 80% humidity. There were mosquitoes everywhere. And then if you've never been up in the north, you get black flies. And they are horrible and they leave big welts. And I remember this one time I put this 50% DEET, totally terrible chemicals, but I was putting it all over. I put it on my shoulders and I put it on, and 3 minutes later, this black fly was biting my shoulders, and it was so demoralizing. Yeah. And then I was putting on a windbreaker to keep off the mosquitoes and bugs, but then you're overheating, and it was just brutal. And I think the most I did is I did a 44-mile day.
As somebody, I live in Truckee for a billion reasons, but one of the biggest ones is that we're high enough to be out of crazy mosquitoes, ticks, and snakes and stuff. Yep. And I tend to go deeper into the mountains to get out, down in the east side and stuff, just to get out of that. So everything you just said, I'm done. I'm not going. Well, chapeau to you, man. That's incredible. And I mean, yeah. I guess my follow-up question is, that sounds really awful. How did you went from that to rally cap and then actually broke the record? What was the,
Well, so, okay, the 4th day, I was hoping to do, try to 50 miles, and I hard day, and because you're just going up and down, up and down. It's wet and it's raining. The rain stops, but it was so overgrown that your feet just stayed wet, and like every step hurt. We've all been there where our feet are just torn up, and I had resigned myself to just I was going to stop. My wife was coming, and I was going to stop early, and I was I need to say I was quite emotional. We all go to our dark places in some of these races, and I'm a man of faith, and I was in a dark spot. I was like, God, what should I do? Should I continue working with the Catholic Church doing solar, or should I show my kids that you put your mind to anything, you can accomplish it? And as soon as I said "or," it started downpouring and thundering. And it was crazy. And I started, I've probably done this laugh cry, right? I was laughing and crying, like, this is crazy. And I was still at a bad place of like, oh, you're just torturing me. So I got done with that, and like that kept sticking with me. Like it was a sign. So I kept training and kept working hard. I think the challenge was, the training wasn't going so well. This COVID stuff was still going on. A lot of the racial injustice we see, it was going on in my backyard. I was talking to, I know a lot of that area of Minneapolis, and that kind of hit me pretty hard too. Of all this stuff, what can I do? And I was really doubting: should I be traveling to Minnesota? Should I be hopping on a plane? What the hell should a white privileged guy be doing? Spending a week out in the woods by himself doing something stupid? And I was very close to just saying, no, not going to do it. It's life's too short. There's other things going on. I should just be on with my family. And I'm fortunate enough to have a group of guys that, we try to get together once a week. It includes some of the runners that are on here. We're doing it mainly by Zoom. And, I was telling them about this. I'm like, I don't think this is right. And they helped me really reframe it of like, okay, Jeff, how can this be less about you and more about something bigger? And that's what really got me thinking. The other piece is, I just read about String Bean, Joe McConaughey, if I got it right. The guy, he had just finished running the Long Trail in Vermont and setting an FKT there. And so I was reading about him, and he had done a fundraiser, and it carried, I think, 7 rocks for 7 African Americans who've been killed by police brutality this year. I might be getting that exact details wrong, but it started me thinking, and I really thought, well, okay, why don't I use this and to help raise some money? And I did some research, and I found a group called Outdoor Afro that's based in Oakland, and they really have a mission of helping African Americans get out in the wilderness, particularly, and then help them focus on leadership. So they're really focused on building people to lead hikes out in parks in the wilderness, and they're a nationwide organization. So I kind of switched my focus here to try to raise some money for this organization as part of this run. And I think I raised over $4,000 for them, just through the generosity of friends and family. And that really kind of switched my motivation. And this was about 3 or 4 weeks before I was going to run it. Really like, okay, this is less about me and, more about what I can do, to help our running community. Because the reality is we're a pretty white running community. And so is the hiking community. And so this organization is really trying to help bridge that. And that was good motivation, and really just helped me get in that right frame of mind you need when you take your first step on some big endeavor like this.
Goodness gracious, yeah. I have so many follow-ups, but I want to first just thank you for the vulnerability to share all that with such articulation and the sincerity with which you attacked all that. That was really, I appreciate it. I know our listeners appreciate it, and I find inspiration in that.
Yeah, well, this year has definitely opened people up to being more vulnerable with everything that's going on. So
I can only speak for N of one myself, but I truly feel that way.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm kind of composing my thoughts, I suppose, because I have so many questions. I think that you hitting that low point and then rallying around your faith is incredibly inspiring. Whether or not, we don't need to go into who has what, but I think that's inspiring, and I think that finding some thing to rally yourself and to dig deep and make a difference that's positive in the world is extremely laudable. It's admirable.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you wherever anybody finds it, I'm glad that you found it, and you were able to put on quite the rally cap and do a lot of good and get an FKT while you're at it.
Yeah, well, I think people say it better. I think Yvonne Chouinard always says, we're here. Everybody needs to do their part with the resources that they have available, and hopefully I can do my little part.
Absolutely. While we're sharing quotes, I pulled up one. It seems like a lifetime ago that you mentioned the storm intensifying and just laugh crying about it. Just so that we can share a laugh cry about it. This is from a book by Clarence King, who was a early Sierra mountaineer back in the 1800s. And he was writing about a night out. There are times when the extreme of discomfort so overdoes itself as to extort a laugh and put one in the best of humor. This tempest descended to so many absurd personal tricks, altogether beneath the dignity of a reputable hurricane, that at last it seemed to us some sort of furious burlesque.
So true.
That's a good write. That's a good little bit. But yeah, it is funny when and again, you really exemplified it, if I can offer that humbly, but when it gets that ridiculous out there, all you can do is laugh and keep one foot in the other. It's all you can do.
Yep.
Adam Kimball just chat commented that quote was so good. Adam, I'll text it to you. So Jeff, you mentioned the activism, and I am also a white mountain runner from North Lake Tahoe. I know I've given a lot of thought on how to contribute, especially to that activism. It hadn't really occurred to me until you brought it up that your roots in the Minnesota part of the country, obviously with, I know the Milwaukee Bucks of Wisconsin were very on the forefront of that movement at a certain point this summer. That area was quite the hotbed. Obviously, I would like to think that we all feel and are empathetic humans, but being near that must have been quite an experience this summer.
It was, because you'd hear both in the news, you'd watch what's happening in Reno and cities around the world. But, I talked to friends in Minneapolis, and, you'd hear the personal stories of how, they heard of riots near their house, or they could hear it from their backyard. It was very moving from that perspective. It's hard when it's in your backyard.
Yeah, it's hard. Period. And stop. It's hard.
Yeah. So we actually, when we were in Minnesota, we took my family and I went to the site where Mr. Floyd was brutally killed by the police, and it was a very somber place, and it was it's hard to see that. It's hard to see that in a place that 10 miles from where I grew up, so that really struck me.
Yeah, as it should anybody. I applaud you for again leaning on the friends in your lives and the support of your wife and family, and taking that as fuel to do something positive. I'm firmly convinced of few things in this life, but if we can create space around the negative elements of this existence and then fill that space with positive deeds, thoughts, actions, as you did, I truly believe that is a way forward.
Yep. And it's I think we all need to figure out how we can help in our running community, in our communities where we live. And I don't have any of the answers, but any little thing people can do is a step forward.
Yeah, truly. Well, yeah. Thanks for taking the time to talk through some of that, because I think it sounds like that's very core to this undertaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about how you picked the route. We've talked about some of your motivations and the support of your family and your faith, and unfortunately the racial injustice in this country. What were some of once you were out there, once you did commit to doing it, could you touch on a few highlights and lowlights out there?
Yeah, happy to. So, just like everybody, it's hard. I mean, I know Helen talked about when she did the FKT of the TRT, she got to choose when she would start because it's close by. So I had to pick a date and pick a flight, and regardless of weather. And September is kind of the best time to do it because it's fall in Minnesota. You hopefully get the first frost, kill off all the bugs and everything. So I picked a date. I was delayed by 2 days because a good friend of mine who I spent time with tested positive for COVID. So I had to wait for a negative test result before I went. So it delayed me by 2 days. Turns out as I was driving up the day before, it rained the whole day. So just by chance, it ended up starting about 2 days later, and the weather was great.
Okay.
So some high points. So the first day you get out, and we're happy to talk about this a little bit more, but I started with a 26.5 pounds pack. I had food for about 7 days. I was carrying about 2.5 pounds of food a day. And, I started out, and, it's too bad. I'd love to show some pictures, but it was gorgeous. If anybody's
I don't want to cut you off. We are fortunate to have very capable people in Donner Party Mountain Runners, and we will post this talk on our website later, and we can absolutely embed photos if you want to share them. Anything else, any other information you might feel is cool.
Yep. So it was fall. It was perfect fall colors. It was reds, oranges, gold. Gold colors, everything. It was gorgeous. It was cool. And that first day, I was just going, and I think like halfway through the day, I just had this quote, like it just popped in my head. It's like, I feel like Superman. I don't know what it was. It was great weather. It was just excited to be out there. I think us living up here at elevation and going down to lower elevation, it's the real deal. It helps.
Yeah.
And everything, like it just felt great. So the first day I just cruised, and you go through the highest point and the lowest point the first day, and I ended up you spent about 1.5 miles walking along Lake Superior, which sounds nice. However, it's those loose rocky like where every foot like sinks by like inches, and so it's actually kind of hard. But I ran through. It was sunset there, and the sun was setting, and the light was on this like island I was walking by that was just off the shore, and it was just it was out of this world. And the first day you just go, and there's about 100 campsites along the trail, and so I hit one and around midnight, and the next one was 9 miles away and stopped. It felt great. Interestingly, that first night I was just sleeping in a bivy sack in the middle of the night. What it felt like, somebody came up with their hand and reached out and grabbed my foot in the middle of the night. And you wake up and like you start kicking a little bit. I'm sure it's just like a squirrel or something, but that's part of the adventure of camping outside.
Truly, especially I'll say my share of sleeping out in the dirt in a bivy sack, and it is a different level of exposure. Before I forget about it, you mentioned you felt like Superman just after you started. And one of the things that I continue to revisit through having the privilege of talking with folks like yourself who have done all these, you're planning for months, if not years, for many of these undertakings. And our mutual friend Adam Kimball said this: once you start the running, compared to the racial injustice, the challenges of weather, the navigating the pandemic, it's really quite simple and easy to just run. And that's got to give you wings, because now you know for 5 to 7 days you're just one foot in front of the other. This is the thing we love the most.
Yep. And that's the key word, simple, right? You're just moving. Yeah. And it's great. And, you know, the other thing that struck me at the beginning, even throughout almost the whole attempt, is that I felt like a kid. I grew up in Minnesota playing in the leaves and making leaf piles and jumping into them. And you know, the whole time you're walking through leaves and that like swish, swish, swish of dry leaves under your feet. It just felt like playing. And it was just joyous.
Damn it, Jeff. I want to go running now. I'm going to get up and go for a run. This is awesome.
The other thing too, well, so big picture, first 4 days felt great. Like just cruising, you know, the first 200 miles. You know, at the end of the 4th day, my right knee was bothering me a little bit, but you know, put my feet up after the 5th day, things started hurting. I've had shin splints before in some of these longer endeavors, and I got shin splints in my right shin, and then my left knee started hurting because I probably overcompensated. Mm-hmm. You know, you're out there for a long time pushing yourself. So the 5th day, you know, it hurt, and then the 6th day was probably the most pain I've ever been in on a run. You know, where uphills were great, but everything else was just hard, and especially the downhills. You know, just the pounding on the shins and knees and stuff. It was pretty brutal.
I can only imagine, man. Yeah, that is a world of hurt. How did you mentioned you were trying to time the frost to kill the bugs? How did you do with how did that work? Were there bugs? Did you know the temps?
Yeah, so you know, you're watching the weather, and I was worried because there was some nights it was supposed to get below freezing when I was out there. You know, because I was planning for mid-September, it got pushed into the end of September. I finished actually in October. And so, you know, 2 things I was worried about is like all the leaves start falling, you can't see the trail. And then I was worried about it being too cold. And so both those things came true, but they weren't big deals.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, there were a couple times where I had to stop, like, oh, where's the path? Because, you know, it's just covered in leaves, but, you know, it was kind of fun. The cold was fascinating because it got, especially near the end, it definitely got below freezing. When my dad and wife picked me up at 2 a.m. when I finished, it was 26 degrees at the car when we got into the car. So it was chilly, but it was great because I just keep, number one, kept my hands warm, which is just for me, my hands always get cold, but I always kept less layers on. And every time I got a little cooler, I could tell I was slowing down. And so it was like this internal regulator just to keep me going. Because, you know, so I was going, I think, you know, 17 to 21 hours a day, you know, sleeping kind of 3 to 4 hours a night. And you get in, well, first of all, I wasn't thinking clearly by the, you know, day 4, 5, 6, but the cold just happened to be this perfect regulator, especially at night, that like, I just got to keep moving. And it was great. It was, you know, in a way like a pacer there with you.
Yeah, I was gonna say it almost takes some of that decision making off your head, which is kind of nice.
Yep.
Especially if your decision making is falling apart on day 5 of an FKT.
So there was, I think, yeah, it was the night of day 5, and you know, I was pushing a little bit, and it was like midnight, 1 o'clock. The trail was along this road, and it was starting to get near Duluth, so there were more roads around. And I came to this 4-way intersection on the road, and you know, on the map, the trail, everything is like you just go forward. And I spent 20 plus minutes figuring out where to go because I was just convinced that I was supposed to go south ultimately, but I was convinced the trail goes west. And I kept doing these circles and looking for the trails and checking my watch and I had to finally like go back a little bit on the trail where I came to like reset myself. And, you know, at the end, like once I finally figured out, I just like laughed, right? Because you know, here it is, it's cold, it's midnight, you've been going for, you know, 16, 18 hours, and like, yeah, your brain is just not working right.
One of my favorite joys of ultra running is that space and being whether you're pacing people, working an aid station, whether you're competing in ultras, whatever. This is a longer conversation for a stronger cup of coffee, but I would love to compile photos, videos, quotes that are just ultra running out of context. Like, so with no other mention, just a video of you like standing in an intersection in Duluth at 1 a.m. wearing shorts, just like looking at maps and just incoherent would be really funny, I think.
Yeah, I think there was at least one car that drove by, and I was definitely thinking like, what must they be thinking? Here's a guy with like, you know, this little headlamp with a backpack on, and this four-way intersection just standing there.
In Minnesota, and they're probably going to roll down the window and be like, "Are you okay?" And you're like, "This is actually the most fun I've ever had. I'm doing great." Yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah, that's wild, man. And so your wife met you at the finish. You've extolled her virtues already. How did she? Obviously, she supported this by like dropping you off, picking you up. I'm sure she helped with a bunch of. She couldn't crew you necessarily, but like, could you talk about how she supported this event?
Yeah, so she, you know, it's interesting. It's all this coordination, right? The kids have school, and so I, you know, was delayed by 2 days, but she stayed on the same flight, came out, and she and my kids and my parents who live in Minneapolis ended up surprising me, just standing on the side of the road, you know. Not they unsupported me, but they were just standing on the side of the road with about 28 or 29 miles left to go on the last day. And I remember I just had come down this like, it's like 200 feet of stairs, and it just hurt. I like that last day, I remember like channeling, I think it's Lamaze breathing that my
Yeah.
wife learned when, you know, just to, like try to, you know, when she had our two kids, and just trying to get through the pain and coming up. And I was like, I didn't know how I was going to like get this done. And, you know, 28 miles is a long way. And sure enough, there they are, like my family, and holding a sign saying, "Go Jeff." And, you know, hindsight, like I barely said anything to them. I like could not speak.
Yeah.
And I don't know, something about these long endeavors, you just get so wrapped up in your head and thoughts that because you're not talking to too many people, you know, saying hi to people on the trails and stuff. But I was just so overwhelmed, and it was just amazing, and it took me like several miles to like I could feel my brain like switching out of whatever that like inward space you were to like, oh, okay, right, normal thinking, like, oh, that was pretty awesome. And, you know, they saw me on another road crossing, you know, a little while later. And so they were pretty spectacular. It was pretty funny though. So, you know, 310 miles, the end is actually, you have to hike a mile in to get to the Minnesota-Wisconsin border. And, you know, my wife was awesome because she's like, I tripped on that mile. I don't know how you did 310 miles of this.
I'm sure you told her tripped lots. Don't worry.
Yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. One of my big toes, I still don't have full sensation in it. Yeah, because I kid it a lot.
Yeah.
But they were awesome, and they were there, you know, at 2 a.m. in the morning when I finished. And because of the delay, I had a friend lined up to drive me. But then he couldn't do it because it was on a work day. So I ended up renting a car and drive it up. And my sister actually helped coordinate one of her friends to get the car back to Duluth, and then they were able to pick it up. And my dad is a private pilot, and he actually flew my sister up to Duluth. And, you know, it's crazy. Fifth day, there was a reroute, so I ended up having to get off the trail, and they knew where I was with the GPS tracker, but I was walking on a dirt road, and sure enough, they fly right over me. And I flip on my phone and turn off airplane mode and call them, and they come back and they like circle me. You know, this one guy out in the middle of the northern woods on a 310-mile trail, and here's my sister and dad flying a plane above. And I was so overwhelmed with love and support, and I've never felt like more supported by, you know, a plane flying over me in the middle of the Northwoods.
That's incredible, man.
So yeah, between my family and my wife and kids and everybody, you know, even these unsupported things, like they were there in the ways that mattered.
Well, yeah, and again, I've had the privilege of interviewing Helen Pelster on her unsupported TRT lap. I've had the privilege of talking with plenty of folks, and I don't know if maybe we read a book or something, but it seems like by far the easiest role in any FKT, unsupported, supported, doesn't matter, is running the thing. Is got to be the easiest one. Because I've watched, Helen's wife, Helen's husband, Javier, do all sorts of stuff to support her. And of course, he's not sleeping while she's out there and just kind of grinding on data to make sure that she has what she needs and stuff. I know running with Adam at the end of his TRT lap, he looked way better than everybody that had been crewing him for 2 days, because it's just way worse. It's just worse. It is. Yep. So I love hearing those stories personally. Just again, like that's the amount of logistics your family put into this is mind-numbing compared to just keep running forward.
Yep. So like Javier, my wife would stay up and not go to bed until I went to bed, and I was 2 hours ahead, so that usually wasn't a big deal. But near the end, I pushed harder and harder, and did some longer days. And she's like, I just couldn't get to sleep until I saw that you had stopped, because with my Garmin, you could send a little message of when you stopped for the night, just for a little communication. So
I've got one of those Garmin InReaches, and I've got all the preset messages, including "This is where I'm going to spend the night. Good night. I love you." Wife. Yeah. It's good, man. It's great. And I know, they're fun to carry on long efforts like this, because you can get messages sent to you. Did you have any friends send stuff to you?
So I'd flip on my phone once or twice a day and got some text messages, and I got a lot of love from my family and friends, and it was great. So it was. I kind of almost rationed that, because it was so intense. I don't know the right way to say it. I'm a typical guy that doesn't express his emotions very well, but everything was just so overwhelming. When you're out there for that long, and you're pushing your body that hard, that you'd start crying when you'd read these text messages of just like, "Hey, you got this! Like, great job, man!" I got a video from my cousins who are 3 and 5, and it was just like I just broke down, because it was just, they're like, "Yeah, you could do this, Jeff," and it was just so touching, and it was almost hard. I couldn't imagine like constantly communicating with them. But I did. You just checked in the morning and in the evening, and it was just so great, and just helped me so much.
That is wonderful, man. It's cool to hear about the Army behind all this, and celebrate that. I think it's worth doing. And again, full disclosure, I'm like an active, like I know I'm stitched together by my partner, and that's why I was kind of asking for specifics on this run. We know we're all held up by the people behind it.
Absolutely, and everybody was behind me. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, it is the best. I know. I read. I pulled up your account or your profile on the Fastest Known Time website, and this was your first dig at one of these, man. Congrats on 1 for 1.
Yeah, and who knows? I might be good.
Yeah. Yeah. I know everybody I've interviewed, no one's frothing to go do another like multi-day Sufferfest right off the bat.
Yeah, it was pretty special though. I mean, having the connection with Minnesota. The funny story, I heard about this about 2 days after I finished the Tahoe 200. My cousin, who lives in Minneapolis, texted me an article of somebody who has set the FKT. And you come out after the Tahoe 200, that race it went great for me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And so it's like 2 years of planning. Even last summer, we always got to Minnesota, and I ran, I don't know, 50, 60 miles of the trail. And a little different than a lot of people that have switched their plans to run FKTs. This is something I've been planning for 2 years. And I think, as you probably heard with FKTs, I consider it, a ladder. And it's the people that set these FKTs before that really help you get up the ladder. So it was pretty special.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendously healthy attitude, because I don't think getting a record that you set broken does not diminish that record in my eyes as a runner and a coach and I don't know. Being a part of a heritage of the pushing the human potential is so much cooler than anything else.
Yeah, and and these guys who've done it before, set great times, and I think there's room to break it, right? So my goal was to get through the first 4 days, get through the first 200 miles, and kind of the fifth day is relatively flat, and the sixth day is there's some flatter sections. My goal is to do 4 days and then start running, right? After a lot less pack weight, I had enough pain that I barely ran a step. Yeah. And so I think there's room for people that can manage their bodies to get to that point that they could run. Although I did meet one hiker, and his friend had tried to set an FKT, and he started out with 50-mile days and ended up stress fracturing both of his legs. Oh, had to quit.
Yeah.
So yeah. Just the terrain is just brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, and who knows? I mean, again, this is the fun thing about being on the cutting edge of the sport is like, who knows if the better plan is to run early, to bring less, to sleep none, whatever. Who knows?
Yep.
Right now, you know the fastest way. You're the only one.
So the record was 7 days and 12 hours. And I kind of planned to do it in 7 days. So I brought enough food for 7 days plus a little extra. And that first day went so well. The things that go through your head, like I couldn't help but like that first day of like, wait, this is going really easy, to slip back to that. Well, you could just, as long as you pull a 60-mile day one day and 50's the rest, you can get it done in 6 days. And in my head, it was going from like that, almost envisioning what it's like to finish and do so well, to like pulling me back. And actually, a little bit of something that I learned on doing the Camino is what I pulled back was with prayer. And a very simple prayer, almost like a mantra, that would kind of bring me back to focus on what I was doing and the steps I was taking. And somehow that worked for me. This, like, my brain would naturally try to think about what it'd be like to complete this in under 6 days with the grounding of where you are. And I think that really helped me, because I was able to keep pushing. And then, by like day 4, it's like, okay, I see the end. And I also see that I can't do a 60-mile day at the end. So I did, 2 55-mile days for the last 2 days and really pushed it. And, I broke the record by almost 40 hours.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I had thought of it. That's obviously
over a day and a half. So it was,
wow.
It's hard to comprehend still.
Yeah, that's a not insignificant amount of time, Jeff. You should be very proud of that. I'm almost hesitant to do this because this is a huge nerd tangent, right? We're at like minute 55, so I don't want to lose the listeners. But as you mentioned it, and you mentioned leaning on prayer for it, but I know Helen leaned on a mindfulness practice and a mantra and breath work. I know Renee does. I know Adam runs with his faith, and I'm not sure if I'm going to articulate it on this call, but it does seem to me that there is something about grounding yourself and letting your body re-identify that it's just running, walking in the woods. Like, it's not, if you can get your system in that place, your nervous system, your heart rate, your brain waves, whatever, whether it's prayer, meditation, breath, whatever, it seems to be a huge advantage in these longer events.
I'm no expert in this. I just have my own personal experiences, but I think you're right. Both in this and in the Tahoe 200, so much of it was just being in the present. And honestly, I'm not too good at that in my normal life with all the distractions and everything going on. And, while you're moving, just like that focus of the step. And, for me too, I find God in the world around me, and being present with him, being present in nature, on these trails, it's motivating to keep going in that and just to stay there. And it's not about what you've done. It's not all the distance you have ahead of you. It's just where you are.
Absolutely. And there is science behind the idea. I mean, it has been proven that with breath work, you can regulate your nervous system to go from a sympathetic fight or flight to a parasympathetic rest and digest state. And of course, we're all going to be better runners if we are in a functional physiology point. If our body and brain are functioning well and the stresses are low, of course we're good runners. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you get up if you get started, you're in a chase, you're behind schedule, whatever, and your body's functioning differently, I'm sure that holds us back.
Yeah. I have a lot to learn from Helen. I'm just kind of a hack that somehow gets through it.
Hey man, I will absolutely die on this hill. We all have a lot to learn from Helen.
Agreed. We're lucky in the community we live. We have such great people.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, and that's, again, maybe we can go for a run and unpack all that. And if we can come to a nice buttoned up thing, maybe we'll write about it for the DPMR membership and what have you. But I think that's what you mentioned is probably at least an important takeaway for me, whether it's not the most important or not. It's that by focusing on that presence and by putting yourself into a position to succeed and not letting things get out of proportion, and especially this year, man, you went out there as an activist and fundraiser for a racial justice idea. You were in a pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of things that can pull you out of it. And what you're saying is that by pulling back into it is what kind of sets you free at the end.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Again, that's inspiring. I hope we can all take that and maybe navigate this with a little more grace and run more,
Yeah. And I'll just let you do my talking now.
I'll do my best, man. I hope I didn't just lose you as you, oh no. Oh no, Jack, somebody, anybody.
We can just give him a sec, Chris. Let's see if he pops back, if it
Cool.
reconnects here.
Cool. In the meantime, while we have Jeff come back, we had a member ask, Jeff, what did your pack weigh at the end, and how well did you manage your food needs? So we'll address that once we get Jeff back. I hope that we can get Jeff to upload some of those pictures of his run and maybe some of that information on things like pack weight and some of those details on our DPMR website. I get to just say all that and then have capable people like you do that, Jack.
It looks like he dropped off, but I bet he's just trying to reconnect. So let's give him a minute and
Cool.
see.
Those of you that are following, you can use the chat window to solicit questions just like that one if you'd like me to ask any specific questions of Jeff when he gets back. If he doesn't get back, of course, we'll make sure he gets those questions. Oh man, we got some good questions already. And we got Jeff back.
Yes. Sorry about that. You guys there?
No worries.
Yeah, technology. That's why we should just all be out running.
No doubt. So Jeff, as you were away, you mentioned something like, I'll just let you talk for me and then cut out, which was funny. I would love to not talk with you, but I appreciate not talk for you, but I appreciate the kind words. While you were away, we had 3 members solicit questions. So I'd love to start with those. We'll kind of do like a rapid fire thing to put a bow on it.
Let's do it.
Jeff, what did your pack weigh at the end, and how well do you feel you managed your food needs?
Yeah, good question. So it started out as 26.5 pounds, and I believe about 18 pounds of that was food, which puts it at about 8.5 pounds of gear. So I planned for about 2.5 pounds of food a day. I ate 2.5 pounds of food a day. I started eating extra the last 2 days. So I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the right food. And I had these pair of North Face shorts where I was able to put almost 2 pounds of food basically on this belt built into my shorts. So I just ate it and I was eating throughout the day. So I ended up with probably 3 pounds of food left. So I don't know, put my pack weight at about 11-ish pounds approximately. But yeah, I mean, if I knew I was going to run so fast, I'd probably bring less food.
Yeah, so yeah, we've learned we can trim it down if we listen to Adam and just don't sleep. If you just eat 3 pounds less food, you're gonna kill it, man.
Yeah. So and
Go back
it's
next
about
September.
yeah about 5,500 calories of food a day is what I was eating.
Did you happen to weigh yourself before and after?
Yeah, I was down about 2 pounds. So
Oh my, that's nice work, dude.
yeah. So again, I mean, that was I, spending 4 days out in the trail and training for it. Yeah, I tried to put in the time to do it right.
That's great. Another listener, our dear friend Helen Pelster, asked to hear a little more compare and contrast on the experience, not the actual accomplishment, of doing the Camino as a personal pilgrimage versus pushing for an FKT.
Yeah, good question. Helen, you asked two good questions.
She sure does.
The pilgrimage, it was a lot more about my faith. And, especially after like the third or fourth day, I was like, I could do this physically. And so I think it was much more about my faith and being where I was. And the FKT was definitely more physically demanding. I mean, on the Camino, you do 50K. I got shin splints and had to walk a bunch of it at the end. And, but still you're start at 8, you're done at 6 or something, and you have a dinner and a bunch of glasses of wine, and you get to usually stay at places where you could have dinner with people and meet and talk. And this was much more, going for such long days, pushing yourself, being by yourself the whole time. It was definitely more physically demanding and much more about how you keep pushing yourself, how you stay healthy, how you keep eating. Yeah, but that question really deserves, another whole session.
Truly, and I hope to have that conversation. I'm going to go with 2 more questions, one from a listener and one from me. The first one from a listener viewer is what was your setup for sleeping at night? How well did it work? Would you change anything?
Yeah, and I know this is a topic of a lot of conversations. So I had like an ultralight bivy sack and Thermarest pad. Like the bivy sack was 4 or 5 ounces. The Thermarest was another 4 ounces. A 28-degree sleeping bag that was less than a pound, made by Cedar Summit, and it almost compresses down to a liter-sized water bottle.
I use my Cedar Summit bag for all my bivy runs too, man.
Yeah, it's great. It really compresses down. And then I did bring, Z-Packs makes a tarp that you use one of your trekking poles for. And I brought that too because there's rain there. So I put on a tarp, I think half the nights. So super light setup. I mean, I got to tell you, the bivy sacks, I learned a lot. Like when I was training in July, I got all set up the first night and then it started raining. And I woke up at 1 a.m. with my bivy sack full of water because I didn't hook it up to the tarps, so it kind of stays up off the ground. And like I made a lot of mistakes, but I'm so glad there wasn't mosquitoes because even with that net, right in front of your face, when in June you could hear the mosquitoes all night. And it just kept me up, and it just, it's like drilling into your skull. Cool. Best tip that I have, earplugs.
Ooh, all right.
Earplugs. And I forgot to wear them the first night, but for me, and because then I was just up too much, but it kind of tunes out all of that fight or flight response of like, things moving in the woods.
Yeah.
Just put in earplugs, you're so tired, and then you just fall asleep.
That's a wonderful tip.
Yeah. So would I change it for what I was doing? Probably not. Yeah, I've done a lot of mountaineering and a lot of backpacking and stuff, and I'm still not 100% comfortable with bivy sack, camping. Yeah. But if you're just so tired, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean it's admittedly it's pretty Spartan when you lay down in the dirt after running. Totally. One of our listeners said we really do need to do a write-up for all this sleeping while running for all the inquiring minds. And maybe I've got some time on my hands. Maybe I'll spearhead that article and hit up you and all of our FKT people for tips.
Yep, happy to help. Yeah, between the setup, there's so many, like String Bean, when he did his FKT attempt, he would sleep in two-hour segments.
Yeah.
So he would, sleep right after the sun went to bed or set, and then right before it came up, and it worked for him. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Totally. Actually, I just fun Springsteen story just to share with you as a friend. When I ran from Devil's Post Pile out of Mammoth Lakes to Tuolumne Meadows with Adam Kimball and Michelino Sinceri this summer. And we ran into him out there. String Bean walking with his girlfriend or wife. I don't want to, his partner maybe. But just out there, just hanging out. And we shot the shit for 5 minutes. And then as we run away, I got his kind of whole story, it was really fun to run into him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the things, people you run into in the woods, man. One last question for the sign off for all the beer lovers in our club, and I'm not one of them. I hadn't had a beer in a couple of years, but you mentioned in your trip report that you had a Finish Line beer when you met your wife and dad. What was your beer?
So I had to go with the Minnesota Classic, the Summit EPA, the extra pale ale. So it's brewed in Minneapolis, and it's just always, it's not like earth shattering, but it's always just really good.
Cool. Hey, if it's what you're looking forward to, it's the best. You know what I mean?
Yep. I asked my wife for a beer and pumpkin pie is what I asked for at the Finish Line. So she brought the beer, but she didn't bring the pumpkin pie. I kind of gave her a little crap about it, but she's like, Jeff, if I would have brought it when I fell, it would have been all over the ground and you wouldn't have been able to have it anyway.
And who knows? I don't know what state you were in. I know that I very regularly think about stuff like that and then finish the run and I'm unable to look at food for like 6 hours.
Oh, so, no, I ate well.
Nice, good work. If I can, I know that your wife apologized for not bringing the bag. Adam, we keep coming back to Adam, but he's a mutual friend. It's funny. Adam and I ran once and we finished and we didn't ask our wives for anything at the finish. And they chose to bring on their own volition some Smirnoff ice and iced us immediately after finishing our run. So at least you got half of what you asked for, man.
Yeah, no, it was great. There was a pie waiting in the car, so I got some pie.
As always, if you don't specify which beer, you might get iced.
Good to know.
Jeff, thank you for your time, energy, and so much wonderful conversation. It's been a real treat for me.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Chris, for hosting this, and hopefully this was somewhat entertaining and helpful for people.
No doubt. And I like I mentioned before, if you missed this or if you would like to reference it, it's going to be on DonnerPartyMountainRunners.com. Jeff, we'll link with you to get some pictures on there of some of the beautiful scenery. I know I would love to see some of that fall foliage since we don't get much of it up here in Tahoe. Right. Thank you again for all of it, man.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, I look forward to hopefully running with you soon, man.
Anytime.
Yeah, cheers. Good night and good luck. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you for the next one.